be okay for him to videotape me? And I'm like, yes, actually, it would be great, because my team member could not be here today because sadly her brother is in heart failure in Florida, and she had to leave suddenly. So thank you, Phil. I really appreciate you volunteering, whether you realize you were or not. It's really a big help. We're here to talk, obviously, about how to get rid of your stuff, right? You know, my company is a company that I like to think of, you know, we are very serious about our role. We don't take it lightly. We know that our people's stuff is very important to them, and that it doesn't feel good to just throw it all away, right? So that's why you're here, I assume. But before we really even go into that, oops, is it not working? Oh, I turned it off. See, you told me not to turn it off, and I did. What's the deal with the Tootsie Rolls on my table? If you walk by my table at any point, I've done this presentation actually a few times. Has anybody ever seen the presentation before? Have you been? Yeah. Okay, great. So the deal with the Tootsie Rolls is my grandmother insisted she was allergic to chocolate. And she felt like Tootsie Rolls was the only, she loved like any of the chewy kind of candies, Mary Jane's, Bit of Honey. You all know the candy I'm talking about because we're all old. Sorry. It is what it is. I'm going to be 62 in a couple weeks, so I can say that. But my grandmother always had a bowl of Tootsie Rolls. She always had them in her pockets, in her jackets, everywhere, in her car. And it kind of became a thing in our family. My mother always had bowls of them in our house. And so through the years, these are just some of the pictures I've taken, including at my mother's gravestone. And I know that may seem a little weird, but whenever we go, instead of putting a stone there, we mark it with a Tootsie Roll. And at my grandfather's, we mark it with a peanut M&M, because that was his favorite candy. But you know, just through the years, like my son, I couldn't be at his college graduation, so made sure that his father had brought Tootsie Rolls with him. My friends always bring me Tootsie Rolls when they know I've had a particularly bad day. This is actually a Tootsie Roll that was in my mother's car after she died, and I still have it. It is literally petrified, but I still have it. So, and that was when my daughter actually went to Israel for high school, and I sent her with a couple of bags of Tootsie Rolls, and she put the wrapper in. Actually, no, I take it back. She ate them all on the plane, and she didn't tell me. And then she went and like told her counselor or her teacher or something, and they searched all over Tel Aviv or Jerusalem for Tootsie Rolls, and they found them in the Arab market of all places. And she put the Tootsie Roll wrapper with a note in the Wailing Wall, which really warms my heart. So that's the deal with the Tootsie Rolls. It is my memory and only my memory, and I'm not trying to impose it upon anybody else, which is the point of all of this. Like, you know, I have Tootsie Roll stuff all, you know, like people give me, and I don't really want, like, you know, Tootsie Roll bags, Tootsie Roll pillows, but I like the idea of the memory still, and this is how I preserve the memory of both my mother, my grandmother, and the idea of the Tootsie Rolls. So, over 50% of us, 50 and over, we're going to be moving at some point, you know, before we die, to smaller homes or transitioning to assisted living. So that's one of the reasons that I do what I do, because this is really hard for people. But we move because it's less maintenance, it's lower cost, health, proximity to family, and you want to be closer to you want to be in an age-appropriate community, right? But what do you do with all your stuff? And 60% of seniors say they have more things than they need, right? Like, I'm sure you all, that's why you're all here, because you don't know what to do with all the things that you have. 28% acknowledge they've been told they should downsize their belongings. Raise your hand if you've been told that. I don't judge, by the way, at all. I really don't. But you know, it's important that you acknowledge that, because don't ever bring in somebody like me into your home unless you acknowledge that you do have too much stuff. Because otherwise you're wasting your time, your energy, and money. And there's just no reason for it. My father hates when I say things like that. He's a lawyer, and he thinks that I'm doing myself a disservice, but I am trying really hard to be that person that really wants to help people learn how to, you know, maintain and contain their stuff on their own. and you should never want to see me again. Once I do my job, you really shouldn't want to see me again. Again, my father hates when I say that. And 75%, how many people say that someday you'll get rid of it? Right? Someday it's never going to come. I promise you that. It just won't. So what do? You be like Elsa. You let it go. And if you don't know the Elsa reference, I can't help you. But why is it so hard? Because we have emotional attachment, we have more years behind than ahead, some people just don't care. Again, no judgment, raise your hand, do you care? I mean, I think most people in this room probably do care or you wouldn't be here. A lot of people have a lot of anger over maybe there was a divorce very late in life, or somebody, your significant other died and you're just angry about it. And then of course there's the guilt that most of us feel about our stuff. Like, why am I getting rid of this? Somebody bought it for me, I bought it for myself. Why should I have to get rid of it? Well, because you've gotten the use out of it that you needed to, and now it's just time to let it go. But where and how, right? Or maybe the question is to ask yourself, if you died tomorrow, what would happen to all your stuff? Right? You can't take it with you, right? You can't. My grandmother tried, I promise. I loved her, but she was literally clinging dollar bills when she died. She thought she could take it with her. You can't. I promise you can't. But you got to start letting go of things like old photographs, especially of people that you don't even know, you never knew. My grandmother was the queen. She was the historian of the family. She had every photo from every generation before her. And, photography was not that old when she was born, but still, tens of thousands of photos over the years. And the story I tell is I ended up with a lot of them and decided to scan, after my mother died, scanned a lot of them, paid my kids $5 an hour to sit in front of the TV one winter break, scan all these photos, and then the night before the garbage was coming, I asked my husband at the time to please take them to the curb, but please lift them up. And, anybody who's heard this story before, I'm sorry, but you know the ending. I said, please lift them up, do not drag them. 5 seconds later, he walks back in the house and says, babe, I need you outside. I'm like, you didn't pick up the bag, did you? Pictures flying everywhere. Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Get rid of things that are broken or damaged. A lot of people say, well, I can fix it. You know what? Again, let it go. Just let it go. Multiples of things, stock pots, linens, towels, spatulas, screwdrivers. In one house, we found over 400 screwdrivers. Not kidding. Old papers and magazines. I mean, everything is on the internet now, right? And I know it's not the same as touching something, but again, if you like the idea of some of these, big headlines of big, historical events that took place, just take a picture of it, make a collage, create a little scrap, memory book. There's so many great ways of doing it these days with the help of technology. And I know a lot of us don't like being on computers and doing a lot of technology, but there are services that can help you with that, including us. We can come up with ideas. And you got to let go of the guilt. You really have to let go of the guilt. It's gonna drive you crazy, and you have to remember that almost everything that you put in a box eventually is just going to get thrown out. You'll never open it again. And the number one downside to not downsizing sooner rather than later. This is a picture from a house that I was at. The woman said she was going to take all this stuff when they were transitioning to assisted living and start scrapbooking, and unfortunately a week later she was in rehab, and then a week later she had died, and so she never got a chance to do this. And so don't wait is the bottom line. If you really think you're going to do a project like this, start it now and do it in small chunks, just like anything else in life. You can't get overwhelmed by your stuff, or it's going to overwhelm you. More of the downside to not downsizing sooner rather than later: people suffer from depression, anxiety, lack of sleep, memory loss, stress, and run out of money, right? The upside to sooner rather than later. I love this quote. People were created to be loved. Things were created to be used. The reason why the world is in chaos is because things are being loved and people are being used. And it's true. It's true. We've attached too much of our emotion to our things. And we've got to let go of that emotion, or it could, I mean, we've literally had clients that have died before they've been able to go through this process because they've stressed so much about what to keep versus what to take. And when you live in 4,000 square feet most of your life, and now we're moving to 400 square feet in assisted living, you cannot expand the four walls, raise the ceiling, lower the floor. As much as I know you think you can't do it in assisted living. You can do it if you stay in your house, but you can't do it if you go into assisted living. So, again, it's really important to dig deep and be intentional. The one thing I really say is our stuff is a burden. It's a huge, huge burden that we carry on our back physically and, figuratively speaking. And it will, the external clutter just keeps causing more internal clutter, and it keeps going around and around and around in a circle. So you've got to figure out a way of breaking that mindset. Yes?
No.
Oh.
Calling my wife.
Okay. That's awesome. Hello, wife. The upside to downsizing sooner than later. You don't have as much responsibility, right? I don't own a house anymore. I never want to own a home again. I never want to own anything again. I don't even want to take care of myself, but I have to. And I do a pretty good job at it most days. But I think we all should admit we are all just like a little bit of a hot mess doing our best in life, right? I mean, that's just the reality. Life is hard, it's messy, it's complicated. And having a lot of stuff just makes it even harder and more complicated. So, give yourself the space for grace and start, when you can, so that you have more time to travel and save money. You'll be saving money, and you won't be drawing down on your savings as quickly if you make the decision to downsize. Why hire somebody like me? Because I'm the expert, right? Just like you hire an accountant to do your taxes, you go to a doctor for medical issues, a lawyer for legal problems. Where is it written that says that we all need to know how to do everything in the adulting world? It's hard. I have somebody who comes to clean my house, not because I can't clean my house, but because I've chosen to work really hard so that I can also play hard. I live in this beautiful place, and I want to go out and do things. I don't want to be burdened by my stuff. So there are experts for everything, including, obviously, what I do. I see for piles and piles and piles, the keep pile, the toss pile, the give to family and friends pile, donate pile, and the still not sure pile, which is really a guilt pile. It really is. The do's of downsizing. Find the low-hanging fruit, the easy stuff, right? That will set you up for success immediately. It'll fire off all the endorphins in your brain. It's just like the idea, and I don't know if you've heard this before, of making your bed in the morning. It should be the first thing that you do because it sets you up for success for the day. Whether you believe in science or not, I hope we all do at this point, but I know. We're not gonna go there. But the bottom line is that there's a lot of brain chemistry about being productive and doing things and constantly checking things off your to-do list. And it's the same thing with decluttering. It really will set you up for success if you buy the easy stuff first. Allow time to reminisce because we all need that, right? Keep an inventory if you think that's important to you. Compromise if you need to, whether with yourself or your significant other who you live with. That's really important. I don't want the divorce rate to go up over this process, but sadly, we've had a couple of people that have gotten divorced, and they're usually younger. They're not 60 and above. It's usually people in their 30s and 40s who didn't really compromise and navigate and negotiate that before they got married. So now it's really a struggle. Count your blessings. We're all living and breathing today. We're here, we drove in a car, we're wearing clothes, we've been fed this morning. We all should be very grateful for what we have, but not obsess over the physical, tangible belongings in our life. Think about the things that really matter, that are most important to you. And I guarantee it's not, the vase that you bought in Hawaii on a vacation 20 years ago, or whatever it is. And be generous. You know, if you can give the stuff away rather than trying to sell it, do that. There are plenty of people in our world that still need things. Look at what's going on in the Southeast after the 2 hurricanes. I lived in Florida for many years. I am devastated and gutted by what happened to the Tampa Bay community where I lived. I know 17 people who completely lost their homes. They need stuff. Everybody always needs stuff. There are always people in our community, whether we believe it or not, living in Boulder, this little bubble that we live in, there are people here that are in desperate need of things. So please be generous if you can be. But don't worry about the unknown. None of us can, really know what the future really holds. So don't worry about that. Don't put your stuff in storage. Please, please, please. That is where things do go to die. We had a client that had stuff in there for 30 years, paid rent for 30 years on a storage unit. And then what ended up happening? She died and it all got trashed. So don't get caught up in the minutia. Don't overvalue what you might want to sell. That is the biggest tripping thing that people get caught up in. We think our stuff has value, but it really doesn't to the next person. And don't do it all at once, but also don't procrastinate. So if you're ready to begin, you can contact a junk removal service. You can contact your local waste management company, get a bin. I happen to love Bin There, Dump That. They actually had me do a podcast with them from they're headquartered in Canada, and they contacted me from Canada and said, hey, you are always mentioning us on social media. Would you do a podcast? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I did. Gather your boxes, your bins. There's always free packing supplies online. On Facebook, Marketplace, Nextdoor, people are always giving those away, so try and recycle if you can, those kinds of things. You need packing tape, Sharpies, purchase a shredder, or take your stuff to one of the local places that will shred, or have Iron Mountain or one of those companies come to your house if you have that much stuff. It's about $1 a pound, I think, to shred these days. And then there are plenty of places in our community to get rid of things, like somebody was asking me earlier about furniture. Home Ahead is a great organization here in the Boulder area. They help homeless people get off the street, get them housed, get them fed, get them clothed, get them meals or jobs, and they are always looking for things, kitchen items and furniture kinds of things. Best Buy will take all your electronics for free except for monitors. EcoCycle, which of course is right down the street with Charm and Resource, they take all kinds of building supplies and hard to recycle stuff. So again, you can contact a company like me if you need these types of resources on where to take stuff. I understand the struggle's real, but I'm here with, if you can't guess, a lot of energy, a ridiculous amount of energy. My eyes are wide open. I'm always trying to figure out a place for everything. I'm very compassionate, but I also say that I have to be ruthless, otherwise why hire me, right? There has to be a degree of ruthlessness in this process, and zero judgment. Anybody that judges they are not going to be your partner in this. I recently met somebody who does treks to Nepal. He's actually there right now, and when he asked me what I did, I said, I'm kind of a Sherpa. And he looked at me like, a Sherpa? And I said, yeah, I'm kind of climbing up the mountain, on your journey. This is not my journey, it's your journey up the mountain, the proverbial mountain. And if you run out of breath or energy, we go back down to base camp, aka your couch, and we have a little, meeting of the minds and deciding what we're gonna do. And, we'll go from there. But, again, it's a process, and it's a very deliberate and intentional process. If you can't afford a service like mine, there are more and more resources that are coming out there. So please, please definitely contact me. Agency on Aging here in Boulder, they're one resource, but there are several others that I'm not even allowed to mention the names because it's part of my vendor agreement with them, but they pay me out of the funding that they get, the grants that they get. And then you get, if you qualify, you have to apply, and if you qualify, you get our services for free, which is really So important these days. I was telling somebody earlier about a woman who called me, 90 years old. Her husband was on Medicaid. They were in assisted living. He got transferred to skilled nursing. His Medicaid benefits went with him. She got kicked out of assisted living. 90 years old, calling me, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? She had to drop down to independent living. She's in a facility now with no food service, no transportation, no maintenance, nothing, and still paying a premium. I don't understand it. So, you know, it's a very, very scary thing, and I get it. You know, I'm going to be 62 soon, and I don't want to be a burden to my kids. But, you know, the sad reality is that it doesn't get easier as we get older, and we have to know how to navigate all of this. So, you know, take advantages of the services that are out there and make sure that you're, you know, really doing your research. There's tons of great resources in that gymnasium that you can also reach out to. And if you want more information, scan the code, take my card, you know, find out about our process and pricing, and of course the financial assistance. And remember, always edit your life ruthlessly. It's your masterpiece after all.